Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago, and welcome to night 3 of the National Consultation on Education 2020. I am Matthew Gibbs, and this evening I will be serving as moderator as we discuss parenting in education. As we all know, parenting in education has changed in 2020. Parenting in education before would have been checking your child's school bag upon return from school, making sure that there was involvement in the PTA. Now, parenting in education involves parents themselves being teachers. And this is part of the discussion that we will be having this evening. Joining me here in studio this evening, we have Natalie Robinson Arnold. Natalie is a social work specialist of the Student Support Services Division of the Ministry of Education. She functions currently as the lead for social work and has been functioning as the lead for parenting and education conversations across Trinidad and Tobago. I have with me as well Ms. Sharon King, who's a school social worker with the Ministry of Education as well since 2015. Ms. King is currently the team lead for the Port of Spain and Environs District of School Social Workers. Joining us virtually all the way from Tobago this evening, we have Mrs. Denise Nelson Frank, who represents the Parent Teachers Association. Ms. Nelson Frank is currently the president of the Tobago region of the PTA and was re-elected unopposed in 2018. So that means she's been doing some good work. So I would like to start off this evening with Denise in Tobago, who will give us a brief introduction on her role here this evening. Good evening, Denise.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me this evening. As we discuss the role of parents, guardian in education, the term parental involvement, parental engagement, and parental participation comes to mind. The theme includes National Consultation 2020 Transformation Education, It Takes a Village. So in our village of Trinidad and Tobago, the borders are being shifted from geographical to national and probably global because of the influence of the COVID-19 pandemic. We Parental, the role of parents in education as not necessarily, as our moderator say, just checking the school bags and ensuring that the children are doing their work. Parental involvement sometimes implies to us that our educators are telling us as parents what they want to see happen. We want to step that up a notch and get in the areas where that is happening, more parental participation, where there would be two-way communication between our parents and our education. And our educators as we discuss issues concerning our children. And where we are already at that level, take it even further to include parental involvement, where the parents are more involved in the decision-making process. This is similar to the concept behind the school-based management, which we know in its present form seems to be a bit flawed and in some cases exists only on paper. As COVID-19 has forced our parents into the role of teachers, we want to see more parental involvement, giving the parents a bit of leeway, even from the employer's perspective, to be able to be with their children, want to take them through the classes. We would also like to see so that our parents can go back to them with the students to help them through. We believe that the parents who are involved in their children's lives end up with children who perform better at school. We believe that it's important to maintain open and honest communication with our children and allow them to share the joys and challenges they encounter on a daily basis. So as parents over the years, we would have gotten to know the friends our children keep, but we also want to get to know our teachers and to develop relationships with them in such a way that the home and school will continue to be united for what is in the best interest of our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. Now, Denise made some very valid points about what it is education looks like and parenting and education looks like in 2020. We now have to look at the role of the employer for parents to be involved in education. We have to look at communication between parents and children, between the guardians. There's a lot of dynamic issues that have to be shared to figure out how do we go forward with parenting and education. Now, before I get to Sharon and Natalie, I'd like to share with you this evening how you can be a part of this conversation. You can call us live in studio at 622-4010. You can send your comments via WhatsApp at 766-0440. And you can also comment on the live stream on Facebook and be a part of the conversation. Now, Natalie, I'd like to throw to you now. Based on what was just presented by Denise, do you agree, do you disagree? Coming from this social work background, how do you think what was presented matches up?
I agree with Denise. I just want to highlight that our parents have always played the role of a teacher. With the onset of COVID-19 and the greater role parents have to play in their children's life demanded more of that role as a teacher. And I think our parents have stepped up to that mantle as best as they can. Of course, there are a few challenges and that we will discuss along the evening.
Now, you made a valid point there. Parents will support as best as they can. And Sharon, I'd like to pitch this to you. One of the things that we've consistently heard is that I can't help my child because I don't know the work. Things have changed so much. What do you think parents can do here to aid their children in getting the work done?
So, first of all, parents have been contributing and providing human service, as Natalie would have alluded to just now. The interactions they have with teachers, members of staff would assist in understanding where they can. There are certain aspects that the parents may not be able to understand, but the teacher, the principal, dean, one of the educators can guide them in terms of how to support the child. And maybe it would just be being present, ensuring that the child has all the material that's needed for the tasks that they have to complete. And supervision, some level of supervision to ensure that the child does what is expected at the particular times that it's needed to be done.
And thank you for that. One of the things that we continue to hear as we discuss parenting and education is the ability for parents to be able to lend that support through supervision, for them to be able to be involved in communicating with the teachers, with the principals. Denise, I'd like to ask you, as a PTA president, what are some of the ways in which you have found that parents have been able to overcome this challenge of supervision as they have to work or being able to communicate with teachers and principals?
COVID-19 has had some positive effects because in some instances you find that there are now some teachers who are more willing to form WhatsApp groups with their parents, despite the fact that it now means that their personal telephone contacts would be out there. So that is one way that has helped parents to communicate with teachers. We know also that the PTA of themselves fill the gap where communication can be sent via the PTA, and we communicate on behalf of those parents who are unable to reach directly out to their teachers. There's one thing I want to mention, though, as it relates to communication between parents, teachers, the school population, is that the ministry can probably look at developing an app. We have actually, as the Tobago region, had a presenter at one time who was working on an app to aid communication between school and parents before COVID-19 pandemic came our way. The concept as we understood it would have removed all the nuances of the many good morning, the many by half this persons only communicate on this forum, which would have been something that you had to typically sign up to access and have authorized usage of it. So it wasn't going to be something available to the wider population. So something along that line can be developed to help with any perceived communication challenges which still exist at present.
Thank you very much, Denise. Now, you see, this is something that I believe many schools have been trying to implement, where they are reaching out to their parents and have been creating avenues for parents to be contacted. Some of the challenges have been overcome, and one way in which has been overcome, we have an Angel Page is stating here on Facebook. She said, "I've been teaching my kids most of the work. I've been taking online sessions just to keep up. YouTube helps a lot with step-by-step videos. So now, as parents have become more and more involved in the process, parents have to find ways to educate themselves to be able to educate their children." Now, Sharon, based on the parental involvement sessions that would have been conducted by student support services and the outreach that would have been done, has that outreach continued during the onset of this pandemic?
From the beginning of the pandemic, we began to look at ways in which we could ensure that our children would continue towards the successes that they are heading to or getting into. And what we did as within student support services, we focused on developing or creating support groups. So we had a number of support groups for our parents, so the parents could come on and have the discussions based on what they wanted, what was difficult for them at that point in time. So the facilitators facilitated exactly what the parents, the issues they were having, and helped them during the discussion. So parents are helping each other to come up with solutions, with the social workers at that point in time guiding the discussion and the support groups. Individuals continued having sessions with parents, whether it was individual sessions or group sessions as well, continued doing PI right through the pandemic. Some of the major issues would have been the impact of the pandemic on mental health. And a lot of the parents, the anxiety that it created, the changes in their children's behavior towards work, and reflecting some of the symptoms of, we would call it the grief symptoms, because they have not been able to engage with their friends, to socialize. And now they are in this virtual world, some of them at home, with persons who don't understand, who may not understand. You have those school conversations. They were missing that, and the parents were sometimes feeling the brunt of that because the child would act up, act out. They were not sure, and that's why we provided those PI sessions and the support groups so that parents had a place where they could voice all of those concerns, and that began pretty early in the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Now, for those of you who may have been confused a bit, and you heard a pie session like me, because I got macaroni pie, beef pie, it's parenting in education. That was what the pie stood for. But there were some very valid points that came from that. And when you highlight what it is, the parents have to help each other. And that's very similar to what Denise said, what the PTA is doing in trying to help each other. It actually speaks to the theme of this consultation, transforming education. It takes a village. Right, so I want to pause right here. We have a call coming in this evening. Tobago, good evening. You're live on studio.
Yes, good evening. I have spent a couple of years in the teaching service, and there's an area of interest. The school is supposed to be, and it has a definition of a school, supposed to be a place where there is of safety and one in which instruction or impartation of knowledge passes on. I, over the years, always felt that between the hours of 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. We need to look in our country to develop something called high school at noon for parents and guardians. And I will tell you why. As a dean, it was one of the things that the kids must understand, that their behavior must be paramount at all times. And if your parents come into the institution where you are during the day, you will find some of the students would be more receptive and more willing, or would be willing to put their best feet forward, because the parents are coming into the school at between 11 and 1. And what they're doing then is that they can have a brown bag lunch and do a half an hour in 4 different subject areas or 3 different subject areas, which puts them in a better position to help their kids or better understand what their kids are doing in the schools. So it's a symbiotic relation that is necessary for parents, guardians, and the students. High school at noon is what I term it, and it is during that 2-hour period, the 2-hour period, that the parents get an opportunity to understand what goes on in that place that the kids are sent off to every morning. And the kids need to know that, listen, boy, my mother coming in here at 1 o'clock or a thing, I had to put my best behavior forward. Have a pleasant night.
Thank you very much, Tobago. Now, Tobago is stating that we need to get the parents to understand what the students are doing. We have a comment here on Facebook from Josana Matamoro. Josana says, be reminded that the education system is moving toward being student-centered. Thus, parents will not need to know the content of the curriculum. Parental support is needed to ensure they have a device and internet access, as well as helping students to make graded assessment deadlines. Natalie, what is your take on both contributions?
Well, I agree with the gentleman from Tobago, but I have always felt that in the education system, our teachers were always willing to support our parents. And we always will guide our parents to learn along with their children. And if they have challenges, they are welcomed in the school where our teachers take the time to show the parents so that they can do their role as a teacher during homework time. Devices, with respect to the devices and accessibility, that has posed a challenge for our children presently, as we are all aware of it. But there are other steps. We have our hard copy and the packages that our parents can take. And once identified that they are having challenges, and their parents can call in to the Ministry of Education Student Support Services for that support, and we will guide them along so that their child could continuously engage in learning.
To be continuously engaged in teaching and learning. And this is the goal at the end of the day. We want to ensure that all students are being engaged, whether it be through a physical package, through online classes. Okay, but I'd like to throw over to Denise. Denise, through the PTA and the work that you all have been doing, what have you found has been the best ways for parents to be able to be involved and to engage their children?
The Tobago Region PTA, prior to school reopening, and with the Division of Education, to ensure that our parents were exposed to the learning management systems that the division had in place, through which teaching and learning should take place during this pandemic time. So presenters from the Division of Education take our parents through how to navigate Moodle, how to navigate Google, available on the division's website, and that kind of stuff. Apart from that, you would find that voluntarily you would periodically have presenters at your various meetings that would help to build capacity in your parent body so that they are more empowered as it relates to how to assist their children as they navigate the education system.
Thank you very much, Denise. Callers, viewing public, you have the opportunity to be a part of this conversation. You can call us at 622-4010. Now, Sharon, things have changed, we've accepted, and we understand that. What are some of the challenges that you are being presented with now from parents that may not have been challenges before? And how do you think, and how do you see parents working through those challenges?
Some of the main challenges, given the shutdown of a number of places of employment, so unemployment is a major challenge for a number of our parents because they would have worked in small businesses, or they would have been the ones with the carts in their own private businesses. And given that the whole, as I said, the shutdown, unemployment poses a real issue. So in terms of accessing the devices, yes, we know the ministry is making and continues to make a number of inputs in that area there. But simple things to live.
Can I pause you for a minute,
Yes.
Sharon? We have a call on the line from St. Augustine. St. Augustine, good evening.
Hi, good afternoon. Jenna Rajkumar, Homeschool Association.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So just one of the comments I would like to make. One of the things I think we should consider as well would be our philosophy of education, again, in terms of how it pertains to parental involvement, because you will find that different schools may have different expectations of parents. Parents will have different expectations of themselves in terms of how involved they should be or they can be. And so I think COVID-19 has really brought that out in terms of the differences and maybe in terms of the different standards, which cause some parents to be a bit more stressed than others. So I think, moving forward, it may be something to think about in terms of the ministry having some kind of formulation of what is our philosophy in terms of parental involvement and what kinds of supports we can give, because there's a spectrum of involvement from homeschooling parents who do a lot of the work with their children already to parents who may work full-time and who may not be able to be as involved. So that would be my contribution in terms of us considering a philosophy, working towards a philosophy of parental involvement that can suit a sort of a wide range of parents in terms of what they're able to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, would that look like an individual parenting in education philosophy from the Ministry of Education, or would that be school-based? How would we gauge this parenting in education philosophy, Natalie?
So what I'm hearing from her is she would like to hear from us what is happening, and Student Support Services is engaging in what we call community voices, so that we can hear from our parents, we can hear from our stakeholders, we can hear from our NGOs within the community on what are some of their expectations. How can we support them through this journey, even during and even after COVID-19, so that we can assist them in and their children in their education.
And we will leave it right there as we take a short break to come back. How can each one of our stakeholders assist in developing this philosophy for parenting and education?
I won the Miss Universe title in 1977, becoming the first Trinidadian to win the title and also the first person of color in the history of the competition. I would remember when I entered the Miss Universe pageant, it would have been TTT that filmed it locally, being there to service and provide entertainment and content for the public. Hi, I'm Janelle Penny Commission, and I believe our story starts right here on TTT.
Hi, I'm Penny Gomez. Hi, I'm Penny Gomez, and welcome to another episode of Pop, 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 Pop. Penny on Point with profiles on persons of interest. This is a show where we get to know some of your favorite personalities just a little bit better, where you get intimately involved because you can go on our social media pages and you have the opportunity to guess who is the person we're going to feature in this week's episode. Go online, submit your guesses. We provided clues for you, and you do so for amazing prizes. Yep, it's about that time. I hear doorbell. Is that the doorbell I hear? I hear the doorbell. I hear the doorbell. I hear doorbell. Let's see who's popped by. Hello.
Oh! This is called the no hangover.
That's how we do it at Pop. So see you soon, Thursdays, 5:30 p.m. right here on TTT.
Welcome back, Trinidad and Tobago, and thank you for being a part of Night 3 of our National Consultation on Education 2020. We're currently discussing parenting in education and what that looks like in 2020. You too can be a part of this conversation. You can WhatsApp us at 776-0440. You can call into studio at 622-4010, or you can comment on our live stream on Facebook. And you can also email us at educationconsultation2020@moe.gov.tt. Before we went to the break, Natalie, we were talking about the part that stakeholders have to play in the development of an education philosophy. We are looking, so what would this education philosophy look like as it's informed by stakeholders? What would it entail? What do you think are some of the tenets that have to be outlined if we're talking education philosophy for parents?
Stakeholders, they play an integral part in our communities, and it's based on that stakeholder philosophy. They are all engaged. So the stakeholders that are engaged in working with children as well as community, the Ministry of Education will try as best as they can to partner with them and work in collaboration as well as other ministries so that we can truly meet the needs of our parents and our students. What can come out of it is some of the challenges that our parents are facing and how best that we can work together and collaborate so that we can meet those needs. And some of the challenges that we're experiencing comes from our essential workers as parents. Our single parents who still have to go out there and put food on the table, and still, how can I teach my children during this time when I have to be at work to feed? So some of those issues are some of the things that both the stakeholders will work in collaboration with the Ministry of Education so that we can address those needs, to parental needs, and support our parents through this journey for the best interest of our students.
And again, the running theme of education being everybody's business and taking a village. Now, I have a question here, and I'd like to direct it to both Denise and Sharon because you have two different perspectives. So I'll start with you, Sharon. This is from Candace Solomon on Facebook. She says, due to work and an overload of schoolwork, I've been overwhelmed and I have not been able to do any form of schoolwork for over 2 weeks. Help me get back on board, please and thanks. From the social work perspective, I'm certain that this is a question that has come up for you all time and time again even before the onset of the pandemic. What advice can you share with that parent? And Denise, will be coming to you.
First of all, we have to recognize it for what it is. You are overwhelmed. You can be overburdened by all of these expectations of work, because I myself would have had issues like that to face, and I had to decide what was critical and most important at the point in time. So there are some things that you have to shelve and focus on what's important at this point in time, so that you are able to manage. Otherwise, you are going to be burnt out. You're going to be the role overload is going to negatively impact. My suggestion would be take one day at a time. Do one thing at a time, because sometimes we can't do it all. And if it's the child, the homework at this point in time, we leave the rest. It would come in at the necessary time, we're not saying not to do it, but for me, what I found work was to simply take one step in front of the other, one thing at a time, and focus on what's critical and important at that time. Because we could get overburdened and running around in your head, I'm supposed to do this, and then we do nothing.
So you've made the points that prioritizing
Yes.
and time management are key. Denise, I'm throwing the question to you now. What do you think can be done to assist this parent who is suffering from burnout at this point in time?
My advice would be initially that she would need to take care of herself. Find a way to distress and self-preserve. And here now is where we need our own little village, whether the village is your family members, a group of parents, a church group. Develop that sort of network that does not necessarily have to be in your physical space. The COVID pandemic has forced us to be in these digital villages where we can lean on each other for support. Perhaps there may be a good cousin, a good friend, a co-worker who may be able to be online with your child for you, someone you trust, to help at a point when you are feeling overburdened. Please do not try to do this alone. It is very important that we recognize as individuals when we need help and reach out and ask for it so that we would be those around us, in this case, our children who rely so heavily on us.
Thank you very much, Denise. And the point that you have made about trying to ensure that you don't do everything alone is a critical one. And more so because at this point in time, we have to understand that the mental health and wellness of our parents is imperative if they are to give the type of support to their children that is needed. Now, Natalie, I know that you were part of a conversation with Dr. Gatsby Dolly recently talking about mental health and wellness for parents, for students during this pandemic. Can you talk to us a little bit again about what it takes and what the critical role of mental health at this point for parents to give to their children, the type of support that their children need?
Well, you know, when it comes to parents, especially when you take that leadership role, you have to be the strong force, and you, regardless of the stress factor that you face, and you will go behind your children. You have that face, and you'll go behind your children for the support. And of course, there are support for our parents that we offer in our support group. However, it is critical for parents to know that they are not in this alone. That all of our parents are going through the same stress factors and coping with this new adjustment in their children's life. And once they understand that, we need to manage. Not everybody's the same and could create that management on their own and compartmentalize everything that they do so that they can focus and still stay afloat. Some parents need to hear the stories. Some parents need to reach out to other parents or another professional. And as you said, it takes a village to raise a child. And their stakeholders is the Ministry of Education and other ministries that are standing by to support our parents through this journey. All they have to do is to reach that olive branch and said, hey, I am having challenges with this. How can I get support? We all need support from time to time. And of course, that will help with their mental health, which is so critical, because if our parents do not have that strong mental health, it will impact negatively on their children. And we know, we cry after we close our doors at night. You know, we quarrel after we close our doors at night. But sometimes it takes more than just closing our door. And we are saying, we are here in the Parenting of Education program, in the Ministry of Education, as well as their other stakeholders and other ministries that are engaged in supporting our parents through this journey.
Thank you for that, Natalie. You have a point that you'd like to add, Sharon? Sure.
In addition, as you go back to the village, some parents, we would have to recognize that they need help because they wouldn't say. So if the people around them, the community around them, other parents, other persons within the shopkeeper could recognize that this child, this person, you're seeing symptoms that may not have been there before, they can be the ones to also suggest, have you spoken to the social worker or guidance officer at your school?
Most definitely. And sometimes even their very children said something is happening, mommy.
Yes.
Something is happening, daddy.
Yes.
And they have become, they are telling their parents, you are beginning to stress us. Mm-hmm. And we have to look at ourselves as parents. What can we do different so that we can keep our family together?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have both, in addition to Denise, made the point that again, community, and that we need to be reaching out for help. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think that Denise can speak to is the need for that PTA at the school. Because if it is because you made the point, Natalie, that getting to understand that others are facing similar or the same challenges as you, then it can now help you to understand that I'm not doing so badly, because there's a tendency to blame yourself. You feel like my child is not succeeding because of me. But if it is you have the support of a community that you can speak to and share with, you will now be well informed and figure out, okay, I've been doing this and it hasn't been working. What can I do differently? So I'd like to ask you, Denise, in terms of a PTA, what do you think, how do you think a PTA can be of benefit to schools going forward, especially at a time like this?
Let me start by just sharing with the population briefly an event/activity which the school that I am presently president for had recently. We called it Come Let's Chat. We started at 8 p.m. and we invited persons who we deemed as experts in their field to come and be, should I say, panelists on our session. And we then placed, after the persons introduced themselves, we placed the parents into different breakout groups. In those groups, there were no teachers from the school. Let me say nobody from school management. And so the parents were able to freely share what they were experiencing. They were able to freely share some of their coping mechanisms, and our facilitators were able to guide them through the process as well. So I am just sharing that as a living example of what a PTA can do to help parents who may not have even recognized that what they are dealing with can be considered a stressful event. Apart from that, we probably need to look at how we conduct our PTA meetings. Yes, PTA meetings are traditionally face-to-face, and thank God for the influence of COVID-19. We are now doing things virtually, adjusting even the time at which these meetings are held so that persons no longer necessarily have to ask for time or from work to be able to attend these virtual meetings. They can even listen in on the go. We would also want to recognize that the PTA is very important to the school's existence. As parents, we are the largest stakeholder in education, but at the same time, we do not belong on the school's organizational chart. So we are like an external entity, yet still so very, very important. So it's going to be very important for us to develop a symbiotic relationship with school so that we can be able to identify things that are of importance and work together to come up with solutions to challenges that may face both our students, our children, our teachers, and our parents.
Thank you very much, Denise. We have a call on the line from Tobago. Tobago, good evening.
I may have joined slightly. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we're hearing you, Tobago. Go ahead.
So I might have missed earlier. But we are looking at let's just say, impoverished communities, right? Where the families are probably working in the market, they're trying to make ends meet, make sure that the children are educated. And would hardly be at meetings in the school, and they would probably just the child off or have someone stand up and say to the child, "Oh, are we this time to cope with children now that they have to leave unsupervised or give up their daily work to stay home and supervise these children and there and not be at the level of education that the children are? How are we dealing? Because there is parental involvement. How do we these parents to not be frustrated, right? And some principals or some people might want to look at these parents as illiterate, carried, and all that. And how do we? What does the ministry have in place for situations like that? And my second question, I realize that you have someone from a PTA, the PTA on board. Yeah. Then a lot of principals who are discouraging PTAs and encouraging PHGs. How is that working out where the Ministry of Education is concerned in terms of reaching out to parents via whatever they call a PH? I don't know if I made sense with my question, but if one could probably put it all together because it may sound jumbled up and try and answer it, but I could be confident.
Thank you, Tobago. Natalie, you want to take this?
Yes, I will. What happened is that what our parents, culturally, certain things happen in certain communities. Mm-hmm. So therefore, we know that agriculture village will require a different means of reaching to our parents, and the system, the teachers, all those in the education system, student support services, we know what is happening with those parents in those agricultural communities. So we make adjustments to meet the needs, and the school is operated based on that premise that is how we should operate. This is when our parents who are involved in agriculture will be available, and therefore they set their programs to meet the need of that community. Likewise, we may have other communities that may have a lot of people that are CPEP. We may have other communities that work in the regular 8 to 4. So programs are built around the community in which the school exists.
And thank you for that. And to speak to the point about how it is we can help each other and help our students, Lauren Semper Scott on Facebook said, certainly it may be wise to create learning communities, students working together online or guided by a homework helper sharing the responsibility. And this is something that Denise alluded to, Sharon and Natalie, you all alluded to helping and sharing the work across the board. We also got a comment that said, mental health now is a necessary topic for this moment in time. The question is, what has this situation taught us about A, our national philosophy on education, B, how parents are prepared for the how parents are prepared for the education journey, and C, how do we equip parents and teachers for ongoing partnership after the pandemic? That, I think, is a great point that we can discuss there. How do we prepare parents and teachers for a continued partnership post-pandemic? Sharon, I'd like to start with you.
How do we? We must begin. How do we prepare them for post-COVID? First of all, to recognize all of the issues, recognize the issues that came out in the pandemic, articulate it, because sometimes we see it, we hear it, a number of people just waiting for COVID to end so that we could just get back to life as we know it, or the normal way of doing things. I'm not certain we are ever going to have a normal anymore. And I'm saying, see it for what it is. understand the impact it is having on everyone. The gender perspective, the culture, how it's impacting culturally, how it's impacting on our economics and what it's doing to people generally, and coming down to the child and how they are going to move on. If we articulate, we recognize, we articulate, how do we move on post-COVID? Those conversations must continue to happen. The collaboration must be there so that we are not in this individually, but we are in it as a collective, and we are going to work towards. I can't say what's the exact solution, but what I know is that would lead us to the solutions would be all of us recognizing that we in this together, you know, and everything that's impacting you is impacting on me. What is impacting in the marketplace, it's impacting in the home. Understanding as well, and I'm passionate in terms of this aspect, how it's traumatizing a number of persons in the community, in the workplace, in the school, all over. It's traumatizing. And what are we going to do about that? Because down the road, it's going to, if we don't come together and work hand in hand, all of the ministries together, all of the NGOs, all of the neighbors, the communities, if we don't do it together, we're going to have a lot of fallout because of the impact of mental health on the population. And can I just give, I remember being on practicum in mental health many years ago, and as a psychiatric social worker, and a number of the persons coming into the institution would come from a number of other places with referrals, nothing that would support the symptoms they had. And in a conversation with a senior person there, he said to me, and it stuck with me up to this point, and COVID-19 just blew it out of the water, that the mental health, because the stigma attached to the conversations of mental health in Trinidad and Tobago, possibly the Caribbean, we have it as something that happens to the other, and all the labels we assign to it, and we refuse to have those conversations. We are losing a number of persons because of that. And unless we are not necessarily attack, but we address what are these issues and do it as a collective, we're going to meet a number of situations down the road that we are not prepared for.
And we're not prepared for them because we're not planning for them. We're not accepting or acknowledging that these are real challenges that we're facing. Now, I know you want to chime in here, Natalie, but when this question was posed, I saw Denise shaking her head like yes, in agreement. So I posed the question to you again, Denise. How do we equip parents and teachers for an ongoing partnership after the pandemic?
Earlier, as I was making part of my contribution, I referred to the symbiotic relationship that needs to be developed between school and teachers. It would be very, very important for open, honest, respectful communication lines to be developed and maintained, where persons, both from teachers and from the parents, can express what are their concerns, and it will not be looked at as something that is out of this world, or you're talking nonsense. Everything would be taken and considered as a worthwhile suggestion. We would then need to set goals which would not be cast in stone, because as the relationship develops and we assess how we are working towards achieving these goals, we may realize that we need to shift something in order to get to where we're going, even if it might take a little longer time. But it must be done in collaboration, not one speaking down to the other or one trying to disrespect the other in any form or fashion. Going forward, it is very possible, because it is somewhat started. Yes, we have quite a number of parents who who may not be very pleased with what is happening right now, but on the other hand, you do have some that are pleased. So when you weigh the positive and the negative, if we feed off the positive aspects of the developing relationship that we see existing between parents and teachers as we try to navigate what is happening with COVID, we just now have to find ways to channel the positive aspect towards those persons who are not yet sharing that type of experience so that we can get them on board. It involves meeting them halfway way in whatever they are experiencing. So a parent may be just collecting packages for her child, his or her child, and they're not very able to explain to that child what is in the package. Perhaps it may help if somebody decides, well, let me do a voice note, let me do a CD, let me send something to this child on a flash that they can play back at their convenience. And when persons see each side bending a little to try to help out a situation, it is going to continue to help to develop an ongoing partnership between parents and schools.
Thank you very much, Denise. We have a call on the line from Tobago again. Hi, good evening.
Yes, good evening. I want to applaud the ministry in this initiative, and I'm glad that the PTA is represented also in this consultation. What I want to query also is, I know the PTA depends on the support of the parents in order to be active in the school. In a situation like this, really pandemic, how much, now that the PTA has the parents or got the parent support to be a PTA in a school, how much active is the PTA in terms of its members, or how much should they be active now with the parents to be a liaison between parents and the school for the benefit of the children?
Thank you, Tobago. So his question, what is the role of the PTA now? How much can they be involved? How can they support? And Denise has been speaking to this all evening, but there is a comment that we have here that can tie into what he has stated, and maybe Natalie, I can let you speak to that. From Jesse Bernard on Facebook, another suggestion is that maybe should they consider students being part of some of the PTA meetings or a special meeting with students involved, because in my opinion, there are some who feel they understand the needs of students, but in reality, they don't. And actually, students tend to offer better solutions to what issues relating to their schools than the parents and teachers combined.
So we have in our school, in our school, student councils. Student councils, they are basically, they're leaders. In the school, they take part in some schools. They are a lot more active than some schools. So they'll take part in the board of management of the school. So there may be a representative from the school, maybe upper 6, form 5. They will have that representative so they can give the student perspective on whatever challenges or what is happening, negative or positive, in the school. So they always contribute to that school development. And that aspect, with the student council, I'm seeing their role being strengthened across more schools so that we can hear from our students a lot more.
We want to hear from our students, we want to hear from our parents, we want to hear from our teachers, and we want to hear from you as we continue this conversation. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
As a costume designer, I understand how the long history of Carnival inspires what we create even to this day. I remember when my mom used to play in Minchell, I would watch the parade of bands as a young kid just to get a glimpse of her in all her mass glory. TTT has given us the earliest memories of the greatest show on earth. It is so important we see ourselves and our talent on TV so that we can understand how much potential we have right here in Trinidad and Tobago. My name is Solange Govaya, and I believe our stories start right here on TTT.
Sweet 100 will be your sweetness this Christmas as we celebrate the sweetest 100 days of Christmas.
On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a partridge in a pear tree.
We're set to make your Christmas brighter when we light up your Christmas tree with 100 bells. There are 100 gifts under the tree. One of them could be yours. Simply count down the sweetest 100 days of Christmas with us, and when you call, give us the correct number we're up to in the sweet 100 days of Christmas. Give us the access phrase on the
first day of Christmas.
My sweetness gave to me. Make those your first words to us whenever you call, and you could win a gift under the tree. So join us for My Sweetness Gave to Me on Sweet 100.1 FM, celebrating the sweetest 100 days of Christmas. Sponsored by
Here's to the vibes that we add. Here's to the wish we could play, but we can't. Cause the drinks bring back all the memories of a carnival we've been to. Toast to the flags that we wear, and toast to the times that we travel.
Tune in to TDT for Grateful with Open Hours on Sunday, 22nd November at 7:30 p.m.
And we are back, continuing our conversation about parenting in education and what that looks like in 2020. Now, the government of Trinidad and Tobago has made some steps to support education, to support teaching and learning. We have been provided with devices and internet connectivity through the partnership with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Public Administration and Digital Transformation. We know that in the budget, it was said that we will be provided with internet connectivity and devices for a number of students. The Ministry of Education has been conducting the Adopt a School program, where corporate Trinidad and private citizens of Trinidad and Tobago have stepped up to provide devices to students who are less fortunate and without both devices and connectivity. Now, I know that arising out of the conversation that we've been having, one of the themes that has ran through was the ability of parents to be able to provide that connectivity, to provide the device, and how they can support their children if their children don't have the connectivity. Now, we've talked about the provision of packages for students, and we've talked about finding different ways, as Denise suggested, even if it is they have the printed packages, because some parents may be unable to use that to support the child. If it's a voice note, if it's something that that the parent can use to help support their child. I want to speak to you, Natalie, to ask, as you have been navigating since even before the onset of COVID-19 and the pandemic and all these different things, how is it that the Ministry of Education and Student Support Services, your area, social work, has been supporting parents? You talked about the community voices and the outreach that you all have been doing, but now, with this online situation that we've been thrust into, what has the engagement looked like? How have you all been conducting sessions? Is it happening at this point in time?
Okay, so what I will speak to, our guidance unit, our guidance officers, they do our universal intervention. So they do the classroom intervention on different topics. They are able to identify our students that are not online. So they will now send that message to social work, and we will look at those children who are not online for a period of time. Then we definitely know that something is happening with this child. So sometimes because of lack of devices, sometimes it's connectivity from where they live, sometimes it's a financial issues to go and receive their packages. So then we do a home visit. We connect with the parents to see how best we can meet their needs. The Ministry of Education could meet the needs of that parent. So we are basically working around and seeing how we could structure and support. What happened? Our parents too, they are quite resilient to what is happening. And some children, even though they are in their school in Port of Spain, they may very well go by the auntie in St. George East because of connectivity issues and devices issues. So parents too have used their own initiative to to resolve their situation and are still tuning it into their virtual learning. So we are ensuring collectively in student support services that our children receive the learning, whether it is virtual or via the packages, and whatever means that we can support them to ensure that this happens.
And they are receiving the education that is their right. Because as we know, every child is entitled to the right
of an
education. Now, there is something that you said that I think many persons don't know, that the Ministry of Education is cognizant of what is happening on the ground, that the Ministry of Education is involved in ensuring that students are online, and if they're not in online, they are at least being accessed, and if they're not being accessed, if they do not have access to education, why is that happening? And I think that many persons believe that, you know, they're silos, that, you know, the school is one thing, the ministry is one thing, but nobody really knows what's happening. And it's good to know, Natalie, that the Ministry of Education, through Student Support Services, is investigating and making sure that students are connected and that everybody is getting the education that is their right. Now, I'd like to share a comment we have here on Facebook from Fiona Rajkumar. Parents are now also responsible for helping children to be healthy, and having some level of exercise is also important. A philosophy of education that caters to the development of the whole child will also allow teachers to understand that the schoolwork aspect of education is but one part, that parents are now responsible for, and that they should not be so exhausted from doing schoolwork, and they should just give the child a screen to keep them occupied. Families should feel that they can stop and breathe if they need to without having anxiety that they're not doing their children a disservice. Now, you smiled, Sharon, because this was something that you were speaking to just now, taking it day by day, taking it step by step, and not putting that pressure on yourself that, you know, I'm doing something wrong.
Correct.
So I think Fiona speaks to that, understanding that, you know, you have to find that balance. But there was a comment that was made before about holistic development and what that looks like now, because before, as educators, it would be discussed as the hidden curriculum. In the classroom, you would engage your students outside of the academics. You talk to them about life, about the home. But now where that opportunity to engage them physically, because, you know, you're based on emotion, you would talk to them. How can parents engage in that aspect of the hidden curriculum and ensuring that their children are getting the full education that they deserve? And as Fiona said, not just placing them in front of a screen and thinking that is the education that is needed.
Correct. What I've seen happen with a number of the personnel in student support services would be to encourage parents to do even within the home. So even during the heavy part of the pandemic when everybody was inside, you had officers who would send out videos just doing simple exercises with the children, parents and children together. Well, if they could go out, there's some yard space, they did send a number of, whether it's videos or they talked them through, or some of them went on Zoom. So I know it's still using the screen, but you engage the parents and the children in some level of exercise in finding ways to engage together and have fun, whether it's cooking, baking together, and they share it among the school community via Zoom or other, whether they send pictures via WhatsApp or Google Meet.
And that speaks to what Denise mentioned before about meeting people where they are. They are at home, you're trying to meet them there to help give them the support that's needed. Now, I want to remind all viewers that you can be a part of the conversation. You can send us WhatsApp messages at 776-0440, or you can call into studio at 622-4010. Now, Denise, I want to come back to you for a minute and just talk to you about some of the support and the initiative, because you discussed that through the PTA, you have created these avenues that parents can get support. They can feel free to talk and to communicate and, you know, get the type of help that is needed. But not all parents are involved in a PTA. Not all parents feel that they can get the type of support that is needed from a PTA. For a parent that thinks that, you know, the PTA, it is just come and it is just talk about all that's wrong with the school, What would you say to that parent about what the PTA is doing now in 2020?
Thank you for that question, and I'm smiling because as COVID came upon us, the requests from parents to be added to the various schools PTA chats have been increasing phenomenally. So perhaps the numbers of persons who had that type of concept is now very, very minimal. Parents are now seeing the PTA as a place where we are like their voice. So if there is anything happening that they are not very comfortable saying for themselves, they can identify one of the administrators on the chat, raise their point, the person is going to speak on your behalf. That role has always been a part of what PTA does because it is part of what the coordinators on your regular PTA meeting would do. They are supposed to be the voice of the PTA. So one of the challenges that PTAs would have faced over the years is, I want to call it a state of ignorance is bliss, where some persons would prey on the ignorance of a newly elected executive, and by some persons, I'm specifically referring to some of our educators who may be having challenges at their school. And then they try to get the PTA involved in their cliquism and try to sway them down a road where they should not be, and that can result in conflict. So depending on how you navigate these things, which are sometimes inevitable, persons would see, well, PTA is not about that. PTA is about coming out and let us discuss. It is not about necessarily raising funds. Yes, you need money to do certain things, but as you are involved in your children's school life, and I want to move from the word involved, as you participate in your children's school life, you get to understand what is happening at school. You get to give suggestions, be it in the bigger group meeting or sending your suggestion to the executive or speaking directly to your school form teachers or your principal. You share your suggestions and these suggestions are considered. We are fast moving away from the day when PTA was them and one group against another. We are more collaborating and working together. Yes, as I said, conflicts would happen, but now more than ever, when you may not be able to run into school and talk with your class teacher or talk with your principal, your PTA is here for you, willing and able to advocate on your behalf, to be that voice for you, to network between all other stakeholders.
Thank you, Denise. And there were some pertinent points that we pulled out of that in that session, that comment from Denise. Denise stated that we needed to understand that the PTA was not just about raising funds. And I think that's where everybody looked at when, that's what came to mind when you heard PTA. You heard PTA, they call it, we in school to ask for money. That's what everyone thought. But now we understand that the PTA is dynamic, it's ever evolving, and it is a community of support. And if nothing else has come out from this conversation that we're having tonight, it is to ensure that there is an active PTA at your children's school. And that you're part of it. Because as Denise pointed out, we don't want just parent involvement. We want parent participation. And I think that's something that we're definitely going to go forward with. Thank you for that, Denise. I have a comment here. And this comment is a bit ticklish because it is something that continues to come up and that we have to discuss and we have to figure out how we can bring resolution or how we can make these persons feel included. From Yolanda Mitchell, support is needed for parents of children at special schools. These children are marginalized and parents are not consulted on decisions impacting on their education by school administration. Natalie, is there anything you'd say to that?
What I can say is that I have been seeing our special ed unit working really hard in developing packages for our children with special learning needs, and they are reaching out there to parents to better support their children with those learning needs. So they have a lot of pictures. They have that will help rather than the chalk and talk. And it's more interactive that they are sharing with our parents so that they can better support their child's learning need. And they will reach out, and I know it will increase as time goes by because our special ed unit is working hard. Additionally, there's also support for our parents who have special needs and have to work with their children. So that support too will be increasing in supporting our parents.
Thank you very much, Natalie. We have a call on the line from Arima. Arima, good evening.
Hi, good evening. First, I would like to commend, support, and say I fully endorse this conversation. I appreciate it, and whomever put it together, I say thank you. Good night to the panel. Good night to you as the host. I am a parent of a Form 1 child who just started secondary school. However, I face challenges as it refers to bridging that gap that you were just speaking about with regards to the PTA and the administration of the school and the tutors, where we are having problems where parents have made every effort to give the children the devices and to have connectivity, yet they are not getting the teachers to come and do the live classes. How do we approach this one, and what systems or what avenues does the ministry have in place to address situations like this? Because this is only week 4 since school has opened, and yet still we are met with a lot of, for want of a better word, parents, well, they take all the time now. This is only, week 2 or week 3? It's 4 months, or they have a far way to go. What I'm saying, you have a lot of intelligent, active, and intuitive children coming into Form 1 now. And when you have children who don't have a mommy and a daddy who are not tech savvy, to sit with them and actually pull up the socks, so to speak, and you have them going online, but Miss is not online, Miss Computer giving her trouble, it's always one particular challenge after another. You find that children start to get desensitized towards learning, and they look for alternative avenues to occupy their time. I am very concerned with the fact that you do have the online classes available, but you have a very low percentage of the teachers actually coming to address those classes. I want to hear what the panel has to say to that, and if there are any measures in place to address that. I thank you for your time again, and I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, caller.
So, for parents who are having challenges with teaching online, you can refer to the principal of your school. And in each educational district, there are school supervisors who can further support you and address this matter at all 7 educational districts. And your principals, you can call the Ministry of Education that can tell you where you can find those educational districts and reach out to your school supervisor for further support.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Natalie. We have another caller on the line. Good evening.
Yes. I'm calling to give some ideas as to how the parents' involvement in education can change. I've submitted some ideas on WhatsApp, and the rest will come in our we're going to submit a report to the Ministry of Education. One thing I would like to pay attention to is the role of the NPTA. They should be such a powerful group in Trinidad that they should have a senatorial position in national governance. So parents have to be more actively involved in the education of the children. In some institutions, they provide classes for parents after school. In a lot of cases, the parents don't turn up. So all these things would have to change, especially with COVID, and the need to have a new way of learning and understanding. Most students can learn anything because the information is available online. So they don't have to depend on their parents. They can Google it and get the information. So the role of parents, especially teachers and parents, have to be different. They have to guide and they have to help to facilitate. this is just part of what I would like to contribute. You will see more of it in our presentation to the ministry.
Thank you very much. And we have seen some of your contribution already. I believe this is the Arima rebranding team, and we thank you for that contribution. Now, we have been talking for quite some time. We understand now that it is critical to have a PTA at school, because we know that the teacher will engage parents at the children's classes and these things, but we need to have that level of interaction among parents. Parents need to be able to communicate with each other for support, and also to support the school and the school's community. Now, there's an aspect of that that has been spoken about here on social media. What is the role of the parent, not only in supporting education of their children, but supporting the teachers who teach their children? I'd like to start that one to you, Denise. What is the role of the parents in supporting the teachers who teach their children?
Thank you very much for that question. It is important as parents that we respect our teachers and that we reinforce whatever they are trying to do with our children. Sometimes and I'm keeping it real, you would have parents who may be displeased about something that a teacher would have done, and they would be, for use of a Tobago term, bad-mouthing the teacher in the presence of the child. And that can result in disrespect towards the teacher. So we need to recognize that the teacher is the professional in his or her capacity as it relates to our children's education. We need to support what they are doing, while at the same time getting very familiar ourselves with what the curriculum for each subject is, so that as our children are going through, we're not there just saying, well, is whatever Miss say? No. We are reflecting on what is in the curriculum and helping to guide our children and supporting what is happening at school. At times, there may be conflict developing between teacher and the parent, or teacher and students, and we know that conflict is inevitable. So then there would be need for clear conflict resolution practices to ensure that nobody holds something against another because of any little misunderstanding that would have developed.
Thank you very much, Denise. And this is what we want. We want parents to support not only their children in learning, but also support the teachers who are teaching their children. So we understand now that, you know, that when your child comes home and say, well, Miss say to do it that way, we don't want you to say, Miss don't know nothing. We want you to be able to say, I understand that. And we want to work together. Miss showed you this, I'm showing you this. Let's find a middle ground. Or better yet, understand why Miss did what she did or said what he said. Miss can't be a he. Why Sir said what he said. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back.
To the vibes that we are, here's to the wish we could play, but we can't. Cause the drinks bring back all the memories of a carnival we've been to. Toast to the flags that we wear, and toast to the times that we travel.
Tune in to TDT for Grateful with Open Hours on Sunday, 22nd November at 7:30 p.m.
Join me, Nicole Larson, live for Jumpstart, your morning boost, a recharge, topical, informative, interactive, entertaining, inspiring. 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. weekdays on Talk City 91.1 FM. Jumpstart, an enlightening way to start your day.
Welcome back, Trinidad and Tobago. And as the saying goes, time flies when you're talking education. This evening, we have been able to disaggregate all the different perspectives in education and what parenting in education means. We have a few small comments here that I'd like to share. From Josana Matamoro, parents need to check out the HFLE curriculum, else we will be creating robots. Our youth need life and survival skills. She also went on to share, in this very moment, we need more social workers and therapists. The psycho-emotional support educators were able to give to students face-to-face in the classroom, corridors, and cafeteria is not given in the same concentration in the virtual classroom. We need to ensure the students have the mind space to absorb the information. I think that is a great point that we can summarize with this evening. So I'd like to give each of you 2 minutes to just summarize what we've discussed this evening and to give your closing comments. I'll start with you, Sharon.
All right, thank you very much. I agree wholeheartedly with the comment just made. In terms of us partnering and working together and that life skill aspect of it, yes. I agree that given the landscape in which we are traversing at this point in time, yes, we would need professionals to assist individuals as well, the children, their parents, the professionals who are delivering as well, because we are all under the same stress, that we are going to have to really, I go back to working together to ensure that we really survive this pandemic and that we come out successfully. Our children are under an immense amount of stress, and sometimes that stress would be from the interaction among and between the systems, whether it's the parental system, the community, all of these things, all of these players inside of there. And each one would have their own stress, their own stresses. And if we can find the avenues to really cooperate, to work together, we can be successful. Our children can be successful. A number of the systems that provide the psychosocial supports, those types of interventions would have to really collaborate and be beefed up at some point in time to provide the level of support that's really needed at this point in time.
Thank you very much, Sharon. I'd like to take one more call before we go to the closing comments. Hi, good night, Maloney Gardens. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Yes, good evening. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, hello, good night.
Maloney, can you mute the device in the background and just listen to me here?
Okay, yeah. Okay. Yes.
Yes, we're hearing you now.
Okay. What I'm saying is I really appreciate listening to the program because I'm benefiting a lot from it. Did I go off? Yeah?
I'm hearing you. You can continue.
Oh, right. I just saw the TV went different. Yeah. So I'm hearing a lot of things concerning the children and the learning, etc., etc. And I'm listening because I have grandchildren. And I have other neighbors have children. And this program is benefiting a lot. Now, I want to say something. I don't know if it is out of the normal what you are talking about, but I know you speak about the Parent Association. And what I want to say is that I used to pick up my grandchild at the school. And when I go there, I would see the bigger children taking advantage of the little ones. Because school over, and parents have to take up the children. And nobody to really guide them. And many times I have to step in and make peace with the bigger ones. Once they take advantage, real advantage. And I had to speak to them as a grandparents and, change the situation. So I like the Parent Teacher Association to look into that area. Where children are left attending whenever school should open again, to look at that area and see if they could do something about it. Somebody to look at each other until the parents come and pick them up, because a lot of advantages take on the weaker ones. So that's just something I want to throw out here to the Parent Teachers Association.
Thank you very much.
Hope I didn't come off course.
That's fine. That's perfectly fine. Thank you very much. Every contribution is a valid contribution. I'd like to go to Denise for her closing comments.
As we wrap up, I just want to encourage us to keep the lines of communication open. As problems develop and we report or we complain about those experiences, also try giving possible solutions. It might just help. Listen to what is your child's experience. Let them know that you believe in them and that they can come out of this, not only this pandemic, but can safely navigate the education system successfully. COVID-19 has brought its challenges, but it also has brought some positive things which we can use as building blocks to continue developing going forward, because things may never go back to pre-COVID-19 status.
Denise. And Natalie, your closing comment.
So I totally agree with Denise that COVID-19 brought challenges, but it also brought some positive things. And I want to focus on the positive things. It encouraged parent-teacher relationship. It encouraged parent-child relationship. It encouraged teacher-student relationship. And I want to plead on the audience and the parents out there, the teachers, so keep strengthening that relationship for the best interest. Parents, you may be stressed out. Seek help. Seek the appropriate guidance that will be able to support your need. Children may give you challenges. I want you to be consistent in your discipline, be firm, and remember, each child is not parent the same way. Learn your children, communicate with your children based on their own personality. Continue, and as we in the Ministry of Education and Student Support Services Division will continue to work with you in the development of your children.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Now, as we close, we have to look at what parenting and education looks like in 2020. We looked at the role of the PTA in supporting parents as they navigate this journey, and understanding that the PTA is not only relevant now, but will be relevant post-COVID-19. We understand that parents have to look more at being involved in what it is their children are doing, not just involved, but supporting every initiative, every opportunity, and that they need to take their time and manage whatever it is they're doing, because we can only do so much. We have to take it one day at a time. Going forward, the Ministry of Education is looking for support from you. There is a questionnaire available at www.moe.gov.tt/NCE 2020 that you can fill out and be a part of sharing your voice and helping the Ministry of Education to understand what the population needs for education. You can continue to share your views via WhatsApp or by the email address educationconsultation2020@moe.gov.tt. I would like to thank my guests in studio this evening with me, Sharon King, Natalie Robinson-Arnold, and all the way from Tobago, my virtual panelist, Denise. Thank you for being here with us this evening. Trinidad and Tobago has been edified by this conversation, and we look forward to our next consultation on Thursday, where we will be discussing blended learning. I'm Matthew Gibbs, and it has been my pleasure to facilitate these discussions this evening. Have a great night.